Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning. No alarm needed. Your eyes just open naturally at the same time they always do. But something is different. Your joints don't ache when you swing your legs off the bed. Your mind is already clear. No fog, no 5-minute delay before you feel like a person again. You walk to the kitchen, and when you make your morning coffee, you're not hoping it will fix you. You're already fine before the first sip. That is not a fantasy. That is what a 2-ingredient morning ritual can do starting from day one, and I'm going to show you exactly how. My name is Dr. William Lee. I've spent over 30 years studying the biology of aging. First in Japan, then across 3 continents. In Japan, this particular combination has been used by longevity physicians for decades. Here in the West, nobody talks about it. Not because it's a secret, but because there is no patent on dried cloves. No pharmaceutical company benefits from you spending $2 at the grocery store. So the information simply doesn't travel the way it should. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly what happens in your body at 15 minutes, 24 hours, 3 days, 1 week, and 1 month after you start this protocol. But first I need to warn you about something. There is one thing the majority of people do automatically after making this drink. Something so ordinary, so completely reflexive, that you would never suspect it, quietly cancels almost half the benefit. I'll tell you exactly what it is in the middle of this video, and I promise you'll be surprised. Some of you will be a little frustrated. I know I was the first time I learned it. Let's start with the science, because this only works if you understand why coffee on its own is a remarkable compound. The caffeine is obvious, but that's not what I'm talking about today. Inside a single cup of black coffee, there are hundreds of polyphenols, biologically active plant molecules that most people have no idea are even there. The most important one for our purposes is chlorogenic acid, a powerful antioxidant that slows the rate at which your gut absorbs glucose from food. Think of it as a natural brake on your blood sugar curve. A major cohort study that followed over 40,000 adults across Europe found consistent associations between regular coffee consumption and improved metabolic markers in people over 50. And research from the University of Western Ontario specifically linked chlorogenic acid to measurable improvements in insulin sensitivity in that same age group. Now here is where it gets genuinely interesting. Cloves. 3 small dried flower buds sitting in your spice rack right now, probably untouched for months. Inside each one is a compound called eugenol. It belongs to a class called phenylpropanoids, plant-based molecules with powerful anti-inflammatory properties. Eugenol works through a mechanism remarkably similar to ibuprofen. It partially inhibits QX2 enzymes, which are responsible for triggering systemic inflammation throughout the body. The word systemic matters here, not just one joint, not just one tissue, everywhere. What makes eugenol especially relevant from a longevity perspective is its dual action. On one hand, it modulates inflammatory pathways. On the other, it has direct antioxidant capacity. It scavenges free radicals at the cellular level, protecting mitochondrial membranes from oxidative damage. For people over 60 whose mitochondrial function is already declining at a measurable rate year by year, this is not a small or trivial effect. Nutritional synergy, preparation. And when chlorogenic acid and eugenol enter the body together, the effect is not simply additive. A 2022 study in the journal Food Chemistry found that eugenol enhanced the bioavailability of coffee polyphenols by up to 31%. The mechanism involves eugenol's effect on intestinal mucosal pathways. It essentially opens the door wider, allowing your gut to extract significantly more benefit from the same cup of coffee. This is what researchers call nutritional synergy. 2 compounds that perform better together than they ever could separately. Now here is exactly how to prepare it. Take 3 whole dried cloves, not ground powder, the whole buds. Pour 300 ml of cold water into a small saucepan. Add the 3 cloves. Bring to a boil, then immediately lower to a gentle simmer. Set a timer for exactly 5 minutes, not 4, not 7, 5. I'll explain precisely why that number matters in a moment. This specific detail is actually critical, and ignoring it is one of the most common reasons people report no effect. After 5 minutes, strain the water through a fine mesh or paper filter. Use this clove-infused water to brew your coffee exactly as you normally would. French press, drip filter, mocha pot, whatever you prefer. The infused water carries the eugenol. The brewing process extracts the chlorogenic acid. They meet in your cup. For busy mornings, crush 1 whole clove with the flat side of a knife. Drop it into freshly brewed black coffee. Wait 3 minutes. Remove and discard the clove. Drink. The fast method works. The full method works better. The difference is eugenol extraction efficiency. Simmering whole buds in water releases significantly more eugenol than a quick steep. But on a morning when you have 8 minutes before you need to leave the house, the fast version still delivers a meaningful dose. Use what you have time for. Consistency over perfection every time. Now, what actually happens in your body? Starting at 15 minutes, you feel a wave of calm alertness. Not the anxious, jittery, slightly racing energy that most people get from strong coffee on an empty stomach. Something smoother, warmer. And there is a clear physiological reason. Eugenol relaxes smooth muscle tissue in the walls of your blood vessels. When those walls relax, blood flows more easily and vascular resistance drops slightly. The result is that caffeine's stimulating effect on your nervous system doesn't feel sharp or aggressive. It feels like clean, steady energy. One of my patients, 63 years old, a retired school teacher, had given up coffee entirely 2 years before she came to see me. Her hands would tremble after drinking it. Her heart would race. She assumed she had developed a sensitivity to caffeine with age, which is actually common after 60. As liver metabolism slows, we tried the Clove protocol. Within 5 days, she was drinking coffee again comfortably, with no trembling and no racing heart. The eugenol was doing its job, modulating the vasomotor response just enough to take the edge off the stimulation. For men and women over 50 whose vascular tone is less flexible than it was in younger decades, this calming effect on the cardiovascular response is particularly valuable and particularly noticeable. At 24 hours in, something is happening in your gut. Your digestive system is in many ways a second immune system. And for most adults over 60, it's running at reduced capacity. Chronic low-level inflammation in the gut lining is extremely common. It shows up as bloating, irregular digestion, and that familiar afternoon heaviness that makes you want to sit down after meals and not move. Many people assume this is simply what happens to bodies after 60. It isn't. Eugenol directly stimulates the secretion of digestive enzymes, particularly lipase and amylase, which break down dietary fats and carbohydrates. At the same time, it reduces inflammatory signaling in the intestinal mucosa. In a clinical review published in 2023, short-term eugenol supplementation was associated with measurable reductions in intestinal inflammation markers within 3 days. People who begin this protocol often notice within the first 24 to 48 hours that they feel lighter after meals, less bloating, less of that sensation of food sitting unprocessed through the afternoon. One of my patients, 68 years old, a retired engineer, told me it felt like his digestion had been switched back on. Biochemically, that description is not far from accurate. Enzyme activity increases, transit improves, discomfort decreases. For maximum gut priming effect, drink the coffee approximately 30 minutes before your first meal of the day, not immediately before. 30 minutes. That window allows eugenol to prepare the gut lining before food arrives, rather than competing with incoming nutrients for the same absorption pathways. By day 3, we reach what I consider the most important benefit for long-term health: blood sugar regulation. Here is what happens when you consistently slow your morning glucose absorption over several consecutive days. Your pancreas starts operating more efficiently because it is no longer being hit with dramatic glucose spikes first thing in the morning. It doesn't need to produce emergency surges of insulin. The receptor cells throughout your body gradually become more responsive to insulin. They need less of it to do the same job. This is the opposite of insulin resistance. This is insulin sensitivity improving in measurable real time. Chlorogenic acid works at the intestinal level, slowing glucose absorption at the brush border of the small intestine. Eugenol works deeper at the liver and cellular level, activating something called EMPK pathways, a molecular switch that tells cells to use glucose more efficiently. 2 different mechanisms, 2 different locations. One outcome, a flatter, more controlled blood sugar curve through the entire morning. How will you actually feel this? By day 3, many people notice that the medium morning hunger, that urgent, slightly irritable need to eat at 10 or 11 hours, becomes much quieter. The need to grab something sweet or starchy just to stop feeling shaky, that impulse fades significantly. You start making better food choices, not because you are more disciplined, but because your body is no longer desperate. If you are currently managing blood sugar with medication, or have been told you are pre-diabetic, this is exactly the kind of protocol worth discussing with your doctor. Not because it is risky, but because it is meaningful enough that your physician may want to monitor your levels more closely as you begin. Bring the research. That conversation is worth having. Now, I want to pause and ask you something directly. How many of you have ever experimented with spices in your morning coffee? Cinnamon, cardamom, a pinch of turmeric? Write in the comments. Write 1 if you have tried spiced coffee before. Write 2 if you have never experimented. I read every comment and I genuinely want to know how many of you are already on the right track. By the end of week 1, you'll start to feel it in your joints. That morning stiffness, the ache in the knees or lower back that takes 20 minutes of moving around before it finally loosens. For many people in their 60s and 70s, this has become so normalized that they've stopped recognizing it as a symptom. They call it just getting older. They've accepted it the way you accept gray hair. But a significant part of morning joint stiffness is systemic inflammation, not just age. COX-2 enzymes don't operate in one isolated location. They circulate throughout the body wherever inflammatory signaling is present. When eugenol enters your bloodstream, the anti-inflammatory effect is systemic. Inflammation decreases not just in the gut, but in connective tissue, in joint capsules, in the fascia surrounding your muscles. In the small blood vessels that supply cartilage and bone, research in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology found that daily eugenol intake over 7 days reduced C-reactive protein, the standard clinical marker of systemic inflammation, by an average of 19% in middle-aged adults, 19% in 1 week. Morning stiffness often becomes noticeably shorter. Some patients report it diminishes almost entirely within the second week. Not because the structural problem in the joint is repaired, eugenol is not a cure for arthritis, but because the inflammatory signaling that amplifies stiffness each morning is being consistently and systematically reduced. By the end of the first month, deeper changes occur in the liver. Your liver processes every compound you consume. Over decades of processed food, over-the-counter medications, moderate alcohol exposure, and environmental toxins, it accumulates what we call oxidative burden, not a disease, a gradual accumulation of molecular damage that slowly reduces the organ's efficiency, slower detoxification, elevated liver enzymes that your doctor tells you to keep an eye on, and often a visible change in skin appearance, a dullness, an uneven tone, a tired texture that no topical cream can fix because the cause is internal. The sustained antioxidant load from chlorogenic acid and eugenol taken daily over 30 days provides your liver's natural regenerative pathways with significantly more molecular support. Phase 1 and Phase 2, detoxification processes operate more efficiently. Oxidative burden decreases gradually and measurably. The skin change tends to follow. Several of my patients mentioned it without me prompting them. That sometime in the 5th or 6th week, someone commented on their complexion looking different, brighter, more even. One 67-year-old patient told me his daughter asked if he had started using a new moisturizer. He had not. He had started drinking Clove coffee every morning. Now we need to talk about the part where all of this fails, because here is the truth, and I want you to hear this clearly. Everything I have just described, all 5 stages of benefit, can be almost completely undone by one thing. One reflexive, completely ordinary habit that roughly half the people watching this video perform automatically every single morning. I told you I would reveal it here. And here it is. Milk, cream, oat milk, any dairy or dairy alternative. Adding milk to this drink blocks the absorption of both chlorogenic acid and eugenol. This is not speculation. It is established food chemistry replicated across multiple independent studies. Polyphenols bind strongly to casein and similar proteins found in milk and milk alternatives. When they bind, they form molecular complexes that cannot cross the intestinal wall. They pass through your system essentially unused. The molecules are still in the cup. The benefit is not in your body. A study from the European Journal of Nutrition demonstrated this directly. Polyphenol absorption from coffee dropped by up to 45% when consumed with milk compared to black coffee alone. 45%, nearly half of everything you carefully prepared, gone. You time the 5-minute simmer. You strain the cloves and then, One splash of oat milk at the end neutralized almost half of it. Sugar creates a separate problem. The entire blood sugar benefit of this protocol depends on a slow, controlled glucose curve through the morning. Adding even 1 teaspoon of sugar creates an immediate glucose spike that overrides everything the chlorogenic acid was working to prevent. You've engaged the brake at the exact moment you floored the accelerator. The two forces cancel. You end up with sweetened coffee and no metabolic benefit. The protocol requires black coffee, no additions, first thing in the morning, at least 30 minutes before anything else. If black coffee tastes harsh to you, start with less coffee and more clove infusion. A slightly weaker brew made with strongly infused water is far easier to drink than a dark roast with no buffering. The clove infusion adds a subtle warmth and mild natural sweetness of its own. It rounds the bitterness noticeably. Most people find that after 1 week they no longer miss the milk at all. Adjust the coffee strength. Do not adjust the principle. The second critical error involves the simmer time, and this is equally important. Below 5 minutes, you haven't extracted enough eugenol from the clove's dense fiber to make a meaningful difference. The dried bud holds eugenol tightly within its cellular structure, and it requires both heat and time to release it properly. Above 7 minutes, the eugenol begins to degrade. It undergoes oxidative transformation into less bioactive compounds. You lose the anti-inflammatory effect. You lose the vascular relaxation. You lose the gut priming. 5 to 7 minutes is your extraction window. 5 minutes is your standard target. Set a timer. It costs nothing and protects the entire protocol. One final group of people who should speak with a doctor before starting. If you take anticoagulant medications, warfarin, rivaroxaban, apixaban, or similar blood thinners, be aware that eugenol has mild anticoagulant properties of its own. At the doses in this protocol, this is generally safe for healthy adults. But for someone already on anticoagulant therapy, even a small additive effect needs to be monitored. This is not a reason to avoid it permanently. It is a reason to have a brief conversation with your cardiologist first, so your levels can be checked appropriately. If you have active gastric ulcers or erosive gastritis, the stimulating effect of eugenol on digestive secretions may increase discomfort in the first few days. Start with just 1 clove instead of 3 until your gut adjusts, or wait until your gastritis is properly managed. There is no urgency, the cloves will still be there. For everyone else, this is one of the most accessible and lowest risk interventions I know of for adults over 60. The ingredients cost under $2, the preparation takes under 10 minutes. The effects are supported by published peer-reviewed research, and you know exactly what you are putting into your body. The method starts tomorrow morning. 3 whole dried cloves, 300 milliliters of cold water. Simmer exactly 5 minutes. Strain. Brew your coffee with that water. Drink it black, 30 minutes before your first meal. Do that every morning for 1 week. Pay attention to your energy at the 15-minute mark. Notice how you feel after lunch. Notice how quickly your joints loosen up when you first stand in the morning. Then come back and tell me what changed in the comments. I'll be reading and I'll respond to as many of you as I can. If this kind of evidence-based approach to daily health is what you're looking for, practical, specific, grounded in real research rather than marketing claims, then subscribe. Because next week I'm covering another common morning habit that appears completely harmless, but works quietly against your cardiovascular system. Most people over 60 do it every day. Most doctors never mention it. The link to that video is in the description. Take care of your mornings. They set the tone for everything else.